A potential contender has emerged in the Penguins coaching search, and Pat and I are going to discuss that, plus discuss Sidney Crosby going off once again at the World Championships this week, right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Damp. You can follow him on all social media platforms at SendInForWet, and you can follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. Of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen/watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. And Pat, we finally got a small breadcrumb for the Penguins coaching search on Tuesday, thanks to Elliot Friedman. And right now there are 4 teams that are without head coaches: the Penguins, the Bruins, the Blackhawks, and the Seattle Kraken. A few teams have filled these positions over the last week. Joel Quenneville to the Ducks, Mike Sullivan obviously to the Rangers, Rick Tocchet's going to the Flyers, and then Adam Foote to the Vancouver Canucks. But I did want to say about Rick Tocchet, Pat, you called it about a week and a half ago to 2 weeks ago on the show. I was kind of thinking it's the most likely landing spot, but you were the one that said, no, he is definitely going to go there. That dude is a Philadelphia Flyer at heart, even though, my friend, he has 3 Stanley Cup rings for the Penguins, 1 as a player and 2 as a coach. I never really bought into him as a serious candidate for the Penguins job. I think it was more of his PR team kind of pushing that a little bit. I just, again, never really thought that he was a serious contender, but hey, did want to give you your flowers because you called that. Rick Tocchet very much is a Flyer.
Before we get into one of the candidates that has emerged for the Penguins, I do want to say this about Rick Tocchet. I was talking to a friend of mine who is a Flyers fan, and I just figured that the writing was totally on the wall that he was going to be the Flyers coach with how quickly they moved on this season from Tortorella. And the thing I was saying was, well, 2 quick things. One, I know that we went over the stats and I still have my concerns about Rick Tocchet as a head coach, but I also look at the situations he was in as a head coach, and it was a lot of dysfunction. So we're going to find out how much he had to do with this and how much of it was the organization. The other thing I'm curious to see with the Flyers is how long is Rick Tocchet's shelf life as a head coach? Because we know with John Tortorella, he lasts 2 to 3 years. In those 2 to 3 years, players would die for him. And then by years 3 or 4, he gets drowned out, the message goes stale, and people move on. So I'm not going to say good luck because I will never, ever, ever, ever root for the Flyers. But I think we all saw, at least me especially, saw this one coming.
I still think Tocchet is a bit overrated as a coach. Again, he's only made the playoffs twice as a head coach during his coaching career. Curious to see what he has learned from those previous 2 stops, especially in Vancouver, where it was just dysfunction junction over there this past season. But he's getting, it looks like a whopper of a contract. Some of the reports out there say he's getting 5 years, $25 million. They are committed to seeing if this will work. So I guess best of luck to him. Obviously did a lot of great things here in Pittsburgh, both as a player and as a coach. But again, that guy, he was born to be a Flyer. And one more thing, Pat, it is funny. Flyers president, former Flyer. Flyers GM, former Flyer. Flyers new head coach, former Flyer. That's just what they're going to do now, I guess. But enough talk about the Philadelphia Flyers on the Locked On Penguins podcast. The small breadcrumb that was dropped by Elliot Friedman on Tuesday was that the Pittsburgh Penguins have interviewed Mitch Love for their head coaching job. And he was someone that I kind of name dropped earlier this week that I felt like could be a candidate. So I guess I'll give myself a small pat on the back for that. We'll have to see if they interview some of the other names that I dropped earlier this week and last week. For those that don't know who Mitch Love is, he is an assistant coach for the Washington Capitals. He has been with the Capitals for the past couple of seasons, joining Spencer Carberry, who very well may win the Jack Adams this year. He is one of the top coaches in the NHL right now. Mitch Love has really focused on the Capitals defensemen these last couple of seasons. And boy, Pat, did a really good job with them this year. Jacob Chikrin has a career year. John Carlson, at least during the regular season, I felt like was mostly okay. Martin Fehervary was really good for them during the regular season. Really stinks that he's not available for the Caps in the playoffs. But by all accounts, he has done a fairly good job with most of the Capitals defensemen this year. And you look at his coaching history, man. He's coached a lot in the WHL. He's been a head coach there and an assistant coach. And he was also a head coach in the AHL for 2 seasons, specifically with Calgary. He was the head coach for the AHL Stockton Heat before they moved to Calgary. And in both of those years, he won the Coach of the Year award. He was that good. He led Calgary's AHL team, Stockton Heat in 1 year, and then the Calgary Wranglers in the second year, a combined record, Pat, 96-33-11 in those 2 seasons. So he has the coaching experience, not the NHL head coaching experience, but he does have coaching experience. B, he's good with development, and C, he's fairly still young. So this guy checks a lot of boxes for me, in my opinion.
This is right in line with what we kind of expected to be the, I guess you can say, prototypical candidate that they're going to be looking into.
Yeah.
And it does blow a little bit of a hole in my, they're not looking for their Spencer Carberry theory, but I still stand by the fact that Carberry was a guy who you're looking at when your team's ready to take the next step. He was a guy who did a lot of winning. Obviously, so has Love. But I look at it this way. He has found success at levels where your goal is development. Your goal is to develop players, juniors, the AHL. Those are 2 levels where I always feel bad for fans of junior teams and fans of minor league hockey teams, because at the end of the day, it's not the mountaintop for most of the players who get there. Most of the players there have their sights set on moving up. But you broke down the numbers, and these are teams who, whether it's in the WHL, which is a very, very heavily scouted, very heavily drafted junior league that a lot of teams dip into, had a lot of success there, had a lot of success in Calgary, in Calgary's AHL system. And regardless of what's going on with the Flames right now, they've had a lot of up and coming prospects over the past few years. So he's helped graduate a lot of players to the next level. And that's what the Penguins are going to need. And you mix that with, he's clearly a guy who has a message that breaks through and has teams win. That can help you with your older players as well, because we know that you can tell that the big 3 kind of understands the assignment. They know that this is a transition period for the organization, but it's not going to burn out their competitive fire. They're still going to want to play some kind of meaningful hockey over the next few years. So if this is the guy who they target, the guy who makes it into the next round of interviews and eventually is given the job, I think it's, for being the first name that we have heard in this search, that we know has interviewed in this search, it's a really strong start, because the credentials are there, the numbers are there, and you brought up the defenseman. What has been the Penguins' Achilles heel outside of goaltending the last couple of years? Defense has not been very good. And the other fun fact I wanted to add about Mitch Love is his time as a player. He played professionally for 6 years, including 5 in the AHL. And in the AHL, 27 points, 6 goals, 21 assists in 278 career games, but 808 penalty minutes. Wow.
Well, he definitely had that physical presence, that's for sure. And I think if he were to get that job, he will want a lot of his players, I think, to bring out that part of their game on the ice, just with the way that he played as a player, Pat. And what else has Kyle Dubas also said a lot during the offseason already? Yeah, we want to remake our defensive group because it has not been good enough these last couple of years. Again, they do not have a bona fide top pairing left shot defenseman on this roster right now. And seeing what he has done with the Capitals defenseman over the last couple of years, that's been his main area of focus. I think that makes me at least decently confident that he can hopefully do good work with the Penguins defensemen, no matter who they are next season. Obviously, Chris Letang, he's going to be another year older. That's going to be the toughest assignment, I would think, just because father time has really come for him. He can't handle, I think, the load of top pairing minutes at this level anymore. I still think he can play, of course, probably second or third pairing minutes, but that's going to be his toughest challenge if he were to get the job. But I would still feel at least decently confident about what he can do, considering the job that he has done with the Capitals these last couple of years. But also, too, like, this is the type of candidate that they are going after it. This should really show everyone that, hey, this isn't going to be some quote unquote retread hire or anything like that. They're going after younger coaches, at least this first one, who have an eye for development and young talent that really want to push those players in the system. So for someone like a Rucker McGroarty, a Ville Koivunen, a Tristan Brose, a Harrison Brunick, like this would be a slam dunk, especially for those types of players who are really trying to make it to the next level. And especially for McGroarty and Koivunen, make it as bona fide contributors at the NHL level.
I look at the defense with a lot of hope if this is the guy. And obviously we don't get ahead of ourselves. It's only one interview.
Right.
They're going to conduct so many others. There's going to be so many other candidates that come along. But if we're going to look at Mitch Love specifically today and work under the assumption that he's going to be the guy, which obviously we don't know yet, but he did well with John Carlson this year. So you give that comparable to Chris Letang. Got a lot out of John Carlson, who's been in the league for quite some time, who has quite a workload in his past. That could really help with Chris Letang. The other thing is, outside of some real draft lottery luck over the next couple of years, you know that they're probably unlikely to find a bona fide number one defenseman in the draft. So having a coach who can focus on your defensive core and coach those guys up could really help for that lack of a true number one defensive prospect in your system. That could really help them operate more as a unit rather than this is our top guy, everybody else fills in the blanks. So again, when it comes to candidates right off the bat, this is a very strong start for the Penguins.
100%. I'm sure though there will be a lot more names that get leaked out at some point over the next couple of weeks. So the Penguins, again, they're doing a fairly good job covering things up, at least with not letting any of these interviews get out, except for Mitch Love. But with his name out there, that's a really strong start. And at least shows to me that right now they're focused on the right type of candidates for this gig. And also, our good pal Danny Shirey posted this on Twitter/X yesterday. Have you seen Mitch Love's mustache? Legendary, by the way. You know what it reminded me of? Paul McLean's when he was the coach of the Ottawa Senators. It looked exactly like it. That was the first picture that came to mind when Danny posted that mustache of Mitch Love's. I've like, looks like Paul McLean's when he was coaching the Senators all those years ago. So I just wanted to end this segment on a funny note, but that'll do it for this first segment. Coming up in the second segment, we're going to discuss Sidney Crosby's insane goal for Team Canada this week at the World Championships, plus discuss what he had to say to friend of the show, Josh Yohe, about the Penguins coaching search as well. But before we get to that, we have to tell you all about our first sponsor, and that is Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, these nuts are packed with fiber and better for your unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm stacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They are always my go-to. Plus, if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein bunch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Dampin. Pat, what a goal for Sidney Crosby at the World Championships this week. He gets the puck along the boards, cuts the net, looks like he's going to dish it off. Nope, fires it, top cheese. No chance for the goaltender on that play. Just a beautiful vintage Sidney Crosby goal, whatever other word you want to call it. It was awesome seeing that, and continues to play lights out for Team Canada at the World Championships. He also did have a lot to say to Josh Yohe about the Penguins coaching search, and he kind of said what we both expected, Pat. Like, yeah, he's not really going to insert himself into the Penguins coaching search here. And what I mean by that is he's not going to keep calling Kyle Dubas or spam calling him and saying like, hey, hire this guy, or hey, interview this guy. Like, no, he's going to let Kyle Dubas do his job. And he's also not really surprised by what happened. Like, he was not surprised that Mike Sullivan was let go by the Penguins, considering that they have missed the playoffs now 3 years in a row. He reiterated that he wants to win. So again, no surprise there. But I didn't find any of his comments surprising.
Not at all. And you could tell obviously this was an article and not a video interview or
Right.
anything like that from Josh, but you could tell the way Josh framed it that Sid was very declarative about this. There was no hesitation. This wasn't Sidney Crosby being polite and giving a stock answer. This was Sid emphatically saying, I'm not playing a role in this. He did leave the door open to say, if Kyle calls me and asks my opinion, I will offer my opinion to Kyle about what we're looking for, anything like that. So you got to figure in one way or another, he will be consulted, but this has never been Sidney Crosby's style. It's been reported and spoken about from many a general manager, many a reporter, many a coach that he keeps himself out of those discussions. He will give his input when it's asked. He will be a complete hockey nerd and ask his coaches if they watched a certain game that he might have notes on. But when it comes to team decisions, whether it's the front office, whether it's the coaching staff, you name it, he doesn't really get involved. And on one hand, I like that because you don't want to have the meddlesome superstar who kind of is the shadow coach or the shadow general manager, because there's a reason that you're a superstar player and it's not because you're a coach. On the other, there are people in this world who are much worse to make decisions about hockey than Sidney Crosby. The guy's a complete hockey nerd. He follows it inside and out. He obsesses over it, whether it's watching other teams, watching other organizations. So I do think when his hockey playing career is over, he is probably going to end up in a front office somewhere because he's got a great mind for this. I wouldn't want him to be totally forceful and kind of tell Kyle Dubas who or what to hire, because let's be honest, at this point, it feels like Kyle Dubas is going to be here after Sidney Crosby. So I think Sid gets that. But yeah, I mean, I'm not totally surprised by the comments, but I do hope Dubas consults him, because this is maybe the best player in the history of your franchise, and you don't want to upset him on the way out.
I'm sure he'll consult him once they really cut this list down to Pat, 2, 3, 4 finalists, and then they're trying to make a decision. Maybe he calls him and asks for his opinion on 2 to 3 to 4 of these coaches. Say like, hey, like, which one would you prefer? Like, do you have a preference? Do you not? Like, I can see Kyle Dubas kind of doing something like that once they get really further along in this process. Again, we're at May 14th right now. Once Kyle Dubas kind of said during the presser that they want to have this finalized by early June. So we're still, 2.5 weeks out from probably a hire being announced by the Penguins. So they got plenty of time right now. Kyle Dubas is also very much focused on the World Championships that's going on right now. Once that is done, I think you'll really start seeing some more in-person interviews. And also, they're probably waiting for some of these coaches to stop coaching. Again, someone like a Todd Nelson, he's still coaching Hershey right now in the AHL playoffs. So once some of these coaches potentially, once their season ends, then it gets obviously a lot easier to have some in-person interviews. So I think that they're doing the first round right now, getting these little video/Zoom interviews out of the way. And then after that, obviously they'll get to the in-person interviews once a lot of the season is over, whether it's NHL, AHL, college hockey, if they're trying to poach a coach from there, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, like I think they may consult him once they get down to a small list of finalists. But yeah, I was fine with everything he said in there. He doesn't want to be overbearing. He wants to let Kyle Dubas do his job. And hey, again, we're lucky that we've had him as an ambassador for this team, and honestly, the entire NHL for the last 20 years at this rate. So just really glad that he said that in that interview. I'll also link that interview in the description box on YouTube, and for everyone that's listening out there that doesn't see our faces right now, in the box for Apple, Spotify, you name it. But Pat, did you have anything else to add about his goal at the World Championships? Anything?
Well, two things about the goal first. Incredible goal, yes, but let's also caution ourselves a little bit here. No offense to them, but it was against France.
Yeah.
Not exactly known for being a hockey powerhouse. But
hey, man, Team USA blew a 5-1 lead to Norway today, then they barely won in overtime. So, hey, some upsets like this can happen. But
that's why the World
USA
Championships
won, but still, it was too close.
It's why the World Championships are fun, because of stuff like that. But as for something you said, I wanted to add real quick. I just want to make sure to preach patience to our audience with this. I know we're in a time where everybody wants everything right away, right now, no waiting, but we got to wait to see how the AHL playoffs shake out, how the NHL playoffs shake out, because there's going to be a couple teams at both levels that disappoint, that lose in a way they didn't expect to lose. And teams always make irrational decisions. So you never know who is going to shake free. The guy who is the Penguins president of hockey operations right now, he was my dream candidate to replace Ron Hextall, but I figured that there was no way he would ever shake free from Toronto just because of what he was doing there and the commitment they seem to have to him. And next thing you know, they decide to fire him. So we've got a good first candidate in Mitch Love. We'll see who else shakes out, but it's going to take a little while. But obviously, we'll keep our ears to the ground for anything that shakes out between now and then.
100%. And I think with that'll do it for this second segment of today's show. Coming up in the final segment, we're going to continue our season in review series with defenseman Ryan Graves and discuss how he played during his second season. That's coming up right after this. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Pat Stamp. And Pat, Kyle Dubas really called out Ryan Graves after his first year with the team and kind of basically said, hey, this first year wasn't good enough. He also went about it really politely to say that, hey, we expect more. We want to work with you and we want to see what you can do going into your second year here. It was probably the nicest way that he could have called out a player saying like, hey, you weren't that good this year, but we want to see how you bounce back in year two. And well, he did not bounce back in year two. He was still not good. I wouldn't say he was as bad as year one, though the bar was literally on the floor, people, but he still was nowhere near good enough in year two. 61 games for Ryan Graves this year. He was a healthy scratch in quite a few. 1 goal, 4 points in those games. His 1 goal and 4 points are a career low for him since he broke into the league in 2018-19 with the Colorado Avalanche. He played a little over 800 minutes of 5-on-5 ice time with the Penguins this year. During those minutes, Graves was on the ice for a little under 50% of the shot attempts, 51% of the expected goals, so that's not terrible, but 48% of the scoring chances, 49% of the high danger chances, only 10 high danger goals for, 9 high danger goals against. He was out to lunch constantly in his own zone. The contract continues to be a problem. I will give him a grade very much in the D's for this year. If you want to say F, I would not blame you, but I'm probably going to go D-. I gave him an F for year one. I'll go D- just because it was a tad bit better in year two. I'm not trying to come across as mean or evil here. I'm just trying to be objective as possible just because he wasn't good this year. But I think the Penguins, they need to do whatever it takes to figure out a way to get him a fresh start. I think that's the best for both sides right now. This experiment has not worked out. The contract is too long. He's making too much money, even though the cap is going up. I know that there's quite a few holes on the left side of the defense going into next season, but at this rate, it really doesn't make sense for him to come back for a third year, especially with the way he's played these last couple of years.
He's got 3 years left on the deal, and whether it's fair or unfair, the deal is the thing that is always going to be an anchor on his performance, because you went over the analytics that he had this season, and all things considered, for being a pretty bad Penguins team this year, those numbers aren't horrible. But the problem is that he's making $4.5 million for 3 more years. When you're making that kind of money as a defenseman, your game has to be elevated. And as you said, I thought he was better this year. I thought they did a better job of utilizing him and putting him in more advantageous situations. The thing that continues to baffle me, and obviously hindsight is always 2020, when they signed him, it was expensive, but I looked at his body of work and thought, all right, he might disappoint. He might not live up to this contract, but I didn't think that it was going to be this bad. It wasn't like he was, this wasn't Jack Johnson. If you go all the way back to that, when they were on the cusp of, and then ultimately signing Jack Johnson, it was like, what are we doing here? This guy's track record's horrible. He's not a good defenseman. Why are we bidding against ourselves to get him? With Graves, you saw some solid play in his career up to that point. Was he outstanding? No, but he was a defenseman that up to that point, you were like, you can find a use for him. He'll fit in. And it's just been a complete disaster. So again, the thing I keep coming back to is you look at the numbers, you look at the analytics, and he didn't have that poor of a season. But the problem is he's making that much money for that long. And when his improvement over a disastrous first season as a Penguin was only marginal, you have to give him a grade. Like, I would have to also give him a D, just because you need to be better.
Right, 100%. And I do think it is 4 years left that he has on that deal. By the way, Pat, it was a 6-year deal that he signed a couple of years ago. So we're 2 years in to the 6-year term. And again, they got to figure out somehow, some way to get out of it, because I really don't think it's going to get any better at this rate. You've had a 2-year sample size for him to really grow into this role as a top 4 defenseman. And they definitely kind of panicked. Looking back at it now, they panicked when they signed him. They're like, yep, we see a hole here. We're just going to go out into free agency, sign him, and hope for the best. And again, it just hasn't worked out. And whether that's sending an asset or two to get out of the contract, or whether it's a buyout, even though Kyle Dubas has gone on record saying he doesn't like buyouts, they have to figure out a way to get out of it, because I just really don't think it makes too much sense to bring him back for next season. And just in general, like, I think a fresh start for both sides would really work wonders here. But did you have anything else to add for his season?
Not really. I mean, if you go to the buyout, it's not horrible. If they buy him out, it's not good. You'd have next year, you'd get a little bit of cap relief, but then for a few years, it would hurt your cap being a little more than $3 million. I don't know what you do here. That's the thing that confounds me, is it's really hard to move on from a contract this bad. And I think at this point, you just kind of have to hope that you can find a taker. And if you can't, you're just going to have to do what you did with them this year. Play them 60 some odd games, maybe less, bury him on the third pair, and hope that at least for his time on the ice, he's not a complete liability.
And the funny thing is, they eased up on some of the minutes that he got this year. His first year, he was getting a little over 18 minutes a game. This year, Pat, he was a shade below 15 minutes. So they cut his ice time pretty good, but he still did not play well at all. So they'll have a decision to make on him throughout the offseason here. But I think that'll do it for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to / watch this one. Pat and I will be back with another show for you all on Thursday before closing out the week with another show on Friday. So for Patrick Damp, I'm Hunter Hodes. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back on Thursday.